Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about WebSockets. When you make a request for a resource on a web server, let's say maybe a web page or something like that, normally what would happen is that you would open up the connection, you say, hey, web server, give me the web page. The web server says, yep, here we go, got the web page, and then you close down the connection. The problem is, though, is that if you have multiple resources, images, audio files, style sheets, and things like that, you can have multiple requests going on all the time to that web server, and it can get bogged down fairly quickly. That's one of the reasons you have things like web bundlers that will try to bundle as much as they can into a particular request so that one request gets as much data as possible. WebSockets help solve that problem. Basically, again, it just opens up a connection to the web server, but then it keeps that connection open until you physically say it's done. That way you can constantly communicate to the web server and it can communicate back to you without having to open up a new request. That makes the communications and the networking much more efficient. It's especially good if you plan to have an application to run on mobile devices. You want to see how it works? Let's get started. Using WebSockets is extremely easy, but of course it takes two different pieces. It takes both the client and the server. So let's take a quick look at both of those. First of all, the client, which is what we're really going to be concerned with. To create a WebSocket, that's pretty much all there is. Now, one caveat here is I am using localhost. All WebSocket connections basically need to be secured, and the only place it doesn't allow, well, lets you to do non-secured connections is doing localhost. So I'm just doing what's called WS. If you were doing a connection and using the same domain policy to a server somewhere, you would do WSS. So for instance, if I had a server at www.boringJavascript.com and I wanted to connect to it, I would say WSS here and then give the URL. But since I'm doing localhost, it's going to be insecure. But this is what creates the new WebSocket connection. Once that WebSocket connection is created, then what we do is we set up the listeners, and there's basically 4 different listeners. There's a listener for when we open the connection. Basically it tells us what's going to happen when we open, and in this case what we're going to do here is we're going to put a little log into our screen that says that the WebSocket has been opened. Second of all, we're going to listen for any kind of message, and this is a message that's coming from the server. So in that particular case, all I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all log an event saying, hey, I have now received a message from the server, and this is the message I received. The server event that comes in will have the message coming in from the server on the data property. Third, there's an on error. What happens if the server throws an error? Well, it's going to communicate to the client that, hey, there's some sort of error has occurred. I got to drop communications. I don't know what happens. And in that case, I'm going to say I've got a WebSocket error, and I'm going to just console.log the event in case there's any kind of problem. Obviously, you would want to handle that error. Finally, we have an on-close. In case there's a close event from the web server, then we close everything out. In that case, I'm just going to, where is it? There it is. Just say WebSocket closed. Now, obviously, you would want to handle error routines. You would want to handle close routines. All I really care about here is I'm going to open up a message. Now, this takes care of all the messages that are coming in from the server. What about messages going out to the server? Well, that's extraordinarily easy to do. That's with the send method. So all I have to do is call the send method with the text that I'm going to send, and once I send the once I send the text, that's it. It goes to the server. I don't care about it anymore. There's no acknowledgement that it received it or anything. We're just sending it out there. The only kind of acknowledgement we might get is if the server decides to send an acknowledgement, and that's what we're going to do in this case. So as you can see, this is extremely easy to work with by using a WebSocket on the client side. Very easy. No problems there. On the server side, I would strongly suggest using a library. And this library, in this case I'm using, is called WS. Now, why a library? Well, you can write one on your own, but it can get kind of a little complicated looking at the headers, looking at the data packets, come across a lot of kind of fun stuff. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. By using WS here, everything works perfectly. It works great and it's extremely easy to use. So just like the client, all you have to do is create the WebSocket server. In this case, I am creating a WebSocket server on port 24601. Internally, it creates an HTTP server, which is what the client connects with. And then it has a group of 6 different error messages or 6 different events that it responds to. A connection event, in which case a client is connected to the server. A close event, in which case everything wants to close down. An error event saying, hey, we got some sort of error. What do you want me to do with it? A headers event, which basically means that this is the headers that came from the client. A listening event, which basically means, hey, the server is now listening. And finally, a error that happens to possibly come in from the web server client. So the client sends us over an error, then we know we have some sort of error. And that's pretty much it. So all I want to do here on the server side is listen for any events that will come in. And once those events come in, we're going to grab that event, and then we're going to basically just spit it back out to the client. So how do I listen for events? So once I get a client connection, which is the connection event. So let me go back down here. On the connection event, I do it on connection. This is the routine I'm going to call. And when I call that event, I'm going to set up a new event called message event on this particular connection. And the message event on this connection basically sits there and wait for a message to come in from the client. When that occurs, we then call, in this case, the on message. And all message, all I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell myself within my console that I've got a string here, and then I'm just going to send back basically an echo back over to the client saying you sent blah blah blah. So if the client sends do re mi fa sol la ti do, I'm going to send back to the client you sent do re mi fa sol la ti do. It's that simple, and that's all I'm going to do. Now, of course, I'm not handling errors here. I'm not handling close events. You would want to do a little bit more than just that for the server, but that's all there is for a server. So I've got two different consoles running here. I've got one console running my server currently, and I got another console running the HTTP server. One console running the server, excuse me, I think I said that wrong. I've got one console running the Scoket Server service, and it's just sitting there right now waiting for something to happen. And I've got the HTTP server running right now on the WebSocket running at port 8080. And its entire job is to listen to anything that's coming in from, or its entire job is to connect up to 24601 and send data. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Let's flip over to our browser. And I'm going to do a Control F5 here. I'm going to do a Control F5. We're first of all saying that, hey, we did get a WebSocket is open, and that the WebSocket messages actually, we actually received a message called connected. Did that actually happen? Well, let's find out. Let's go back over to our browser. Excuse me, let's go back over to our code. Let's look at the Scoket server. And sure enough, that's what happened. When I make a connection, I'm going to send immediately the data called or a string called connected. And that is exactly what happened on our browser. We got the word connected. So let's send the test text. Let's send the word, this is some text. We click on send. So we came out saying attempting to send, this is some text. We got back a message from the web server and it said, you sent, this is some text. So hey, that worked great. Let's just check to make sure that's what we intended to happen. On our WebSocket, when we click on the enter button, when we click on the send button, which is this right here, the event listener went to send text, and send text said it got the value of it, and we should have logged attempting to send. Let's check that out. Go back to our browser. Yep, we typed in attempting to send and then the text. So let's go back over to our code. We did a WebSocket send to text to send. So back over to the Scoket server on the on connection, we had said that, hey, we want to run the on message method whenever we got a message. So on the on message method, we sent back the word you sent message. So we just immediately just sent the word you sent message back over to the sockets, to the Scoket client, excuse me. So in the Scoket client, when we got a message, we came to this routine because we had initially set it up in the connection section somewhere. I've lost track of it. Where did I put it? Yeah, here it is. Yeah, I'm sorry, right here. I got confused with the server there. Well, on the on message here, anytime we get a message, we went to the on message method. On the on message method, we first typed out WebSocket message received. So let's check that out. Did we get that? Yep, we should have did. WebSocket messages received. Let's go back over to our code, and we log the event data, which basically the WebSocket event that came through, the data property has the text that the server sent over to us. So let's finally flip back over to our browser. And sure enough, we said we attempted to send this is some text, and the server said you sent this is some text. So that proves that we've got a communications going right now, and everything is still moving. So if I type in other text right here, and click on send. It still works because the connection, unlike a regular HTTP connection to a server where it makes the connection, get a resource, and then closes it back out, this connection is staying open. So I can type in another thing. This is boring, and voila, works like a champ. So that's basically how this works. Now, first of all, do you have to send text? No, you don't have to send text. You can actually send binary data. As long as the server knows it's accepting binary data, you can actually send binary data to using blobs. Go to the Mozilla developer documentation to find out exactly how you can send out binary. And I'm not going to kind of cover that. So one of the things I want to show you next is an actual application that can be written with the WebSocket. Like I said, that's next. Okay, let me show you very quickly a type of application that you can do with WebSockets. And the whole idea of this WebSockets here is that you're controlling a zoo, and the server is basically simulating the fact that it has animals it wants to bring into the zoo that people can take a look at. So we have 4 different options we can have here. When we open the zoo, what the server will do is it will give us 10 animals that are part of the zoo, or that are open to the public where people can actually view them. Then on a periodic basis, we'll get new animals coming in. So periodically the server will sit there and say, okay, you know, here's a new animal, here's a new animal, here's a new animal. And that number 0 there that you see inside get new animals will increase the number of animals that are waiting in the queue for us to bring in. So once we click on get new animals, they get added to the zoo. Well, if an animal gets sick or something, we need to be able to take that animal out. So we'll have a checkbox within our list here. And once we click on the checkbox, and click on remove selected animals, that will take the animals out of the zoo and give them back over to the server for the server to be able to process. And then finally we can close the zoo, which will take all the animals and move them out of the viewing area and give them all back to the server. And so what this is going to show you is how you can use just simple text. And in fact, I'll be using just a JSON. I'll be JSONing an object here to be able to give a command and give certain data, which this command says, yeah, I need to open, I will need to get, I need to remove, I need to close, and here's all the animals that are associated with it. And I'll go through that here shortly. So once we click on Open Zoo, there's our bunch of different animals. So the server is now activated. So what will happen here is, in fact, it just went up by 1. We already got an animal ready to go within our queue, and this animal within our queue, once we click on new animals, we can now bring in to be able to show within this our zoo here. Now we have 3 animals. Now we got 4, so let's get those animals. Now we've gotten those animals up. There we go. We've just got a koala bear, a vizsla, a heron, and a holy smokies, I can't pronounce that. Sorry, that's something like. And my classifications are off, but don't worry about that. That's not important here. I've got 2 more new animals. Well, we don't want to have really the aardvark and the lizard and the koala bear. We won't want to have them in there. So we click on those 3 checkboxes and we click on remove select animals. They're now removed and then out of the animals. Oh, we got 4 more new animals. So let's add 4 more. Oh, we added a cougar, an impala, a newt, and a puma. And so once we're all finished here, we can close out the zoo. So once we close out the zoo is now closed, and notice now we have 0 new animals. So everything's been removed from the zoo and given back over to the server. So let me show you kind of very quickly how all that worked. The whole idea here is, let's flip over to our code. And the whole idea here is that we have first of all we have a certain commands that we are sending off to the server. And here's, in fact, line 91 here is a very good example here on an action closed here. Basically, an object that we're sending over to the server, or that the server sends back to us, is going to have a command property and a data property. And this command property is going to be the command that we're going to operate on, either open, get, close, whatever we happen to decide. And we decide what that is. And the data will contain, either nothing like a blank object here, or it may contain an array of different animals depending upon the certain situation. So what we first of all have is that we have our user actions. These are user actions that represent all of the different things that we do when we click on those buttons: the open button, the remove button, the get button, and the close button. All that is processed here within the process command, which once we click on something, where's that? Yeah, here it is right here. So once we click on something, one of those buttons here, it's going to go to the process command, and it's going to figure out what command we've processed based upon the data tag. And once we've done that, it's going to either do the action open, action remove, or action get, or action close. So let's just take a look at action open here real quick. Action open, we're going to do the WebSocket send, because send is the method we use to send the data out there. Our command is going to be open, our data is going to be absolutely nothing. Remove is very simple. We're going to go through and find all of the inputs that have checks. We're going to figure out what animal it's going to send based upon its type, name, and its classification, and we're going to remove that animal and remove the child from the listing in our particular zoo. And basically, once we've done all that, we're going to run the remove command, and that remove command is going to do the animals.remove in that array that we pushed here in setting 3. And I think I said that remove there removes it from the server. No, it doesn't. Actually, it just adds it to array. And once that array is done, we're going to do the remove command and give that array back over to the server so it can do whatever it needs to do. And we're going to send that as a JSON stringified. And the same thing with the get. Once we get the get, we're going to get the animals in there and pop it into our particular queue using our zoo using the add animal. And then finally, the close is going to take all of the animals out completely of our zoo, plus remove any animals that are in our queue, and give those back over to the server. So what this basically will allow us to be able to process commands based upon the actions we take. Well, what about actions that the server is sending us? Let's go way back up to the top here. Here's all the actions that the server could possibly send us. The server may send us an open command saying, hey, I'm currently open, or it's going to send us a get command, which basically means, hey, I've got some new animals for you. I want you to get them. And this is where the magic came in, where we had that number that was changing from 1 to 0 and all that kind of fun stuff. So when we open the zoo, what it sends us is the data. Once we get that particular data, we're going to just basically add that animal to our zoo, and we're going to remove the zoo is closed message to our table. When we get the animal, we're going to take that animal and put it in what we call an animals queue, and then we're going to change the length of the string within the length of the number of animals in the queue into that little green circle. Let me just flip over here real quick. It's that green circle that you see here in the get new animals. So all we really had to do is that's basically all it really is. With our client here, we're just going to get we only care about the open and the get. We don't care about anything else. All we have to do is now do the event handlers, and this just works the exact same way as we showed before, is that when we get an event on the on message, because we've set the on message to be, where do we put it, where do we put it, where do we put it, where do we put it? Yeah, here it is down here. Here's where we did the WebSocket down at the very bottom here, where we did the on open, on message, on error, and on close. And again, I didn't do the error things. I didn't do any kind of closes or anything like that. You can do that for later. But on the on message itself, all we really did here was just when we got a message, we parsed out the event.data, because all of our data comes with the event, and that's going to be a string. So we're going to do a JSON parse on it, and then we're going to get the command and the data. We're going to get what server command we're going to need from our router, and then if it is actually there, we're going to router and pass it the data. And that's pretty much it. So the server works exactly the same way, is that just like before, we're going to be getting commands called open, remove, and close from the client. Those are the 3 different commands that we're going to be getting from the client. Once we get those particular commands there, we're going to do the open zoo, we're going to remove animal, or close the zoo. When we open the zoo, all we do is we get the first 10 of our first 10 of the zoo animals. I read them here. Forgot to tell you that. I've read all the animals here. I got a listing of just a bunch of different animals. Data's wrong. I'm not worried about it. But I get a listing of animals there. So we're going to give them the first 10 animals in our list, and we're going to send that command using the command open and then the data. And that command open, remember we've taken care of on the WebSocket.json. So we're going to send all those animals there with the data. When we close the zoo, we're just going to say the zoo is closed. And this is the send that we're going to send the stringified message. When we remove an animal, actually, let's see, yeah, because when we remove an animal, that's basically when it's clicked and saying, I want to remove those animals, we're going to get a message back from the client saying, hey, I'm removing something. Here are all my animals. So the animals are within the data, so I'm just pushing those to my zoo animals. And then I do send a remove command, but I don't take care of it within the client because I didn't really mean to. I didn't really program in there. You can do that yourself if you wish to, but it's just basically saying I've actually done the remove, so no biggie there. And then finally, when we close the zoo, we actually close the zoo itself. So one thing that we do here is that here is our connections for the WebSocket server, just like it was before. But I've set an interval here for every 5 seconds, plus or minus 5 seconds, anywhere between 5 seconds to 10 seconds. Every 5 to 10 seconds, I'm going to do a send animal. And when I do a send animal, what that does here is that it sends out this response here. It sends a get message and the animal data that I've given, and it just the single animal that I'm sending over to the zoo to get ready to be displayed. And all I do here is just get a random animal. We send it here using the get command, and then that will send the response, and then we just do another set timeout there. And that's all it really is to it. And that's it. But that shows you something you can do here with the WebSockets. It's very easy to set up bidirectional communication. So it's a wonderful thing to do if you're going to get bogged down with doing a lot of requests to a server, and you don't want to sit there and have to open the connection and close the connection each and every single time. You can open the connection one time and just continually communicate with the server. And that's pretty much it for the WebSockets, both the client and the server. And that's all there is to using the WebSocket API. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Please click on the like button below if you like this video, and make sure that you subscribe to this channel by clicking on the subscribe button. If you want to see all of our videos, go to www.boringjavascript.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you later.